Our body doesn't store water for later use, so it's really important that since we're constantly losing water, that we're constantly taking it in as well, and that we have the right level of water balance in our body. There are three main ways that we can take water into our body. The first one's obvious, and that is liquids, especially the liquid water is a way of taking water into our body. Also, foods are high in water, some more than others. The obvious example is a watermelon, which even has water in the name. But even think about like slicing into a tomato and all the water that's coming out of there. Both plants and animals' products are going to be a source of water because they're made up of cells. And since they're made up of cells, cells are primarily stocked with water. So we get some of the water when we eat these cellular foods. We also make a little bit of water through the process of metabolism. So if you remember your cellular respiration equation, we take a fuel, burn it in oxygen, and the products are carbon dioxide, ATP, and water. So that metabolism process adds to our total body water intake. But like we mentioned, we're constantly losing water. We lose water in urine, we lose water in feces, and we lose water. I'm losing a lot of water actually talking to you right now. Through respiration, we lose a lot of water too. So since we're constantly losing it, we got to constantly take it in as well. One of the ways that our body helps maintain water levels is through thirst. Our body is very sensitive. When water levels decrease, it means that the concentration of dissolved particles like sodium increases. Okay, so if you have a certain amount of sodium in your blood and water goes down, that means that sodium is more concentrated. We have receptors for that, and when that happens, one of the first things is our brain goes ding, 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 I'm thirsty. And that's when we definitely want to drink water to make sure we take it in because it means that we're low in it. Okay. Another way that we regulate water balance is the use of our kidneys. So our kidneys, we have two of them, and they're filtration systems. A certain amount of blood passes through our kidneys, comes in through our renal artery, and is going to pass through these parts of the kidney here, where it basically goes through these structures called nephrons. That as that water, some of that water passes through parts of that nephron, basically our kidneys decide, do I keep it in the blood or do I get rid of it in urine? It's a little more complicated than that, but that's basically what your kidneys do. Blood comes in, do I keep it? If I keep it, it's going to come back to the body. It's going to come back through renal veins. Okay, do I keep it? Yes. Do I keep it? No. Then it's going to go out through my ureter, into my bladder, and then out through my urethra. We're going to pee it out. Okay, so these kidneys are really important for maintaining water balance. One of the ways to know whether we're in water balance is to actually check our urine to see if it is very concentrated. The darker the urine, the more likely you are to be dehydrated. Ideally, you want your urine to be really light colored and not very yellow at all. Okay, so it's a really good, easy way to check if you are dehydrated by checking your urine. Other things that can tell you that you're dehydrated is if you have a headache for no other reason, if you're irritable, if you feel a bit confused, if you feel a bit disoriented. These are all potential signs of dehydration. Conversely, there are situations where water levels can get too high in the body. This is usually not because of drinking too much water, although that can happen, and we'll talk about a fatal case of water intoxication in a second. But usually water intoxication happens due to a lot of sweating, and this is what this diagram talks about here. Okay, so all these like white dots, these white circles there, assume that they represent sodium or other solutes that are dissolved in water. Okay, when you sweat a lot, your sweat, if you ever tasted sweat, it's a bit salty. Through your sweat, you lose water, but you also lose these solutes, in particular sodium. Okay, so let's say I'm sweating a lot, and I'm drinking back just water. If I'm drinking back just water, what happens is that water comes in, but those solutes aren't replenished. And overall, what happens is your water levels are reestablished, but your sodium and your solute concentrations are very low. And unfortunately, when this happens, it can lead to a condition called hyponatremia, which means low sodium content in the blood. And sodium is so important for the electrical activity of our body, for our heart to beat, for our nerves to send signals, so important that hyponatremia can have a number of very negative outcomes. For instance, it can cause headaches, confusion, irritability, drowsiness, and in extreme cases, it can actually be fatal. So here's an example. This is a crazy example of how water intoxication can happen through the excessive consumption of water, but only in just really unrealistic situations. So usually it happens when we sweat a lot and drink back only water. But in the United States, in California, these DJs a number of years ago had this radio contest called Hold Your Wii for a Wii, right? Where you could win a Wii video game console. And the whole premise of the radio contest was for these people to continuously drink more and more water, and they weren't allowed to pee. So usually our kidneys are what's responsible for maintaining water balance. And if our water levels get really high, our sodium concentration gets really low, I'm going to pee. I'm going to have to pee. But these people weren't allowed to pee because if they did, they wouldn't win the contest. They had people calling in, nurses calling in saying like, people can die from drinking too much water. Water intoxication can be fatal. And the disc jockeys actually laughed about it on air. And tragically, a woman by the name of Jennifer Strange was part of this radio contest, and she did die from water intoxication, which is such a ridiculous way to die and just so preventable and so just stupid when you think of it. I guess the good outcome of this story, although it's not good, it doesn't replace someone. Her family sued the radio station and its parent company, and they were awarded millions of dollars for it, and the disc jockeys were fired. But it's just an example of how really you would have to just stop yourself from peeing to get into the levels of water intoxication. Usually it's from excessive sweating and replenishing only with water.